If you have two shoes, it is time to sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, it is time to sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on streets. This revolution is not on Facebook. This revolution is not about burning cars, but this revolution is primarily in the mind. Because if your mind is not under your control, your body will be a tool that your oppressor will use to oppress you and your people. Steve Biko said that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Peace and blessing, peace and power, love and light to all African people from around the world, on the continent or in the diaspora, from wherever you are, from the African Continental Unity Party, we salute you. My name is Kabbalah. I'm here on our weekly discussion where we talk about African affairs, and everything that we talk is to give us a full understanding of our situation and possibly to help us forge a way or a path to whatever that we need to do for Africa to be freed. In other words, we do everything that we do to create the conditions necessary for African liberation and African emancipation, which we are aiming for as African people. All of us, we are aiming for that, for those two things: African liberation and African emancipation. Now, today, I felt necessary to just briefly discuss about a subject that we sometimes think about but don't put more focus on, which is the subject of development. You see, since the post-independence period in Africa, we have embarked on a journey to development. This journey suggests that we must do everything that we can do to create the conditions of development in Africa. In other words, we want to develop Africa. Now, in most cases, when you look in the history of development itself, you will see that it has been shifted from one perception to another perception based on based on advice provided from Europe or by Europeans to African people. Like, around 1960s, when we embarked on the journey of what is called African independence. If you may remember, we had to rely on the expertise and knowledge of the Western world so that they can tell us what we can do to eventually develop ourselves. In other words, we embarked on the journey of emulating what has been done on the West in order to develop Africa as the West has developed. So up until now, everything that we have been doing in Africa is to copy whatever the Western world has been implemented in order to create the condition for Africa to develop. So the first advice or the first instruction that we received after colonialism was of what we can call modernization. And modernization literally implied that we as African people have to abandon our culture and tradition because these two were in contradiction to the correct to the conditions that can bring development to a people. In other words, the African culture and traditions we are considered to be in opposition to the European culture, which is proper and necessary to create the conditions for development. So for us to be developed, we had to abandon our own culture and tradition in order to adopt the way of life of European people so that whatever development that have taken place in Europe can now be replicated on the continent. So we went through the stage of modernization. We had to destructure our villages, our our villages, our towns. We had to change our names. We had to change a lot of things in the quest of development, which is the Eurocentric development. And it did not succeed. We had to embark on the second stage, which was now for industrialization or economic development. Now, industrialization was, given to African people as a way to develop Africa, which emphasized that Africa has to develop industries, has to develop infrastructures and stuff like that. But for Africa to be able to develop those industries and the infrastructures, we had to borrow money from the World Bank and the IMF in order to fund the same infrastructures and the industries that we needed for our development. So we took money from the West through their financial institutions such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and then we took the same money back to Europe to hire European experts and stuff like that so that they can come to build our roads, our infrastructures, and whatnot. So at the end, we didn't see development that we intended, to see in Africa. What we actually had to face was the debts, the debt of the loans that we took from the World Bank. We now had to refund the credit took from the World Bank and IMF. And the situation or the story of the debt has put Africa in the condition where we are today. Most of us in our countries, we are still paying that money with our blood. The money that was taken, 20 or 30 years ago, and the money that was dilapidated by crook leaders, in collaboration with Europeans. So after the stage of industrialization and economic development, we embarked on the third stage now, which was called neoliberalism. Now, European came back to Africa. They told us that, well, you cannot develop because you are too much nationalistic, or so to say. So in order for you to develop, you need to liberalize your market. In other words, all the institutions owned by the state had to be now privatized. The state has to reduce significantly its intervention in the markets. So the market has to be privatized. So in other words, we had to embark in a pure capitalist journey in order to see development taking place in Africa. And neoliberalism has done much damage to Africa than you can imagine, in a way that the state itself, the state has been now destabilized, has been weakened to the point where it cannot now take care of its internal affairs. Those internal affairs must be left to private capitalist corporations to come now as sole providers of jobs, of economic development, and whatnot. So the role of state has been reduced to that of executors of instructions given by global corporations through their meetings in Davos, as we know them. So now we are at the stage of what we can call, globalism or globalization, which actually even is a step further to, neoliberalism. In a sense, globalization, many people understand it as the free move of the people, and the world becomes closer. People come closer than ever before. But in reality, globalization gives more, gives more freedom to capitals to be moved from one point of the globe to another point. Globalization gives more freedom to capitalist enterprises to do their business globally, to exploit people in Ethiopia, to manufacture the clothes that have to be sold in New York or in Paris, and all these maneuvers. But you and I as an ordinary citizen, we don't have that freedom to move as we want in the world. You go to America today, you see that some countries, people don't have even, the freedom, or they don't have access to get whatever visa or documents that is needed to immigrate to America. So this has been the shift of the world since actually the period of African independence up to this stage. We have been lectured in different ways in order to develop. And unfortunately, since it is said that the most important lesson of history is that people don't actually learn from the history, you see, is that we don't capture what has happened in the history so that we can acquire the wisdom that is needed to change our strategy today as African people and begin doing something different from what we have been doing in the past. We are still doing the same thing, which is to copycat whatever the Western world has done in order to develop Africa. But this is one thing that we don't realize, is that the Western world didn't develop through industrialization, through modernization, or through globalism, or whatsoever theory we can come up with. The foundation of the Western economic development was slavery and colonialism. When you look, almost all the nations today that are called superpowers in the world, they had colonies somewhere. They were involved in slavery, and colonialism and slavery laid the foundation of what we can call today the first industrialization, the first industrial revolution in Europe. So it's based on the exploitation of other nations that Europeans have been able to establish their supremacy economically and militarily and whatsoever. So we are actually being lied to think that if we can do what Europeans are doing, we'll be able to develop. We are being lied to or deceived to think that if we become democratic, we will develop like Europe, like France, like Germany, like, I don't know, America. But all these countries did not develop through democratic means, and they are not even democratic countries. They developed by exploitation of other people, and they are still in one way or another involved in the exploitation of other nations. And that's the reason why they are waging wars everywhere. They are everywhere there's resources. When you look in Iraq, there's resources there, oil. That's why America, England, and their allies were there destroying that nation in order to establish an American states controlled by America. It's the same thing in Libya, which is in chaos today. It's the same thing they wanted to do in Syria, but they failed. It's the same thing they did in Afghanistan. So this is just an overview of the world. But we need to understand the psychology of European to see that everything that Europeans have done or have advocated to the African people for our development has been aiming to only facilitate European domination of the world. As our ancestor John Henry Clark told us, that there was nothing that European ever brought to the world which was intended to do us good. Everything they brought was to facilitate their own domination of the world. Until we understand that, we will not be able to critically assess our role in the world, and most importantly, our role in the struggle for our own liberation and emancipation. One of the prominent figures in European, intellectualism is called Abraham Maslow. He's one of the people that have brought a major contribution to what we can call European civilization. And Abraham Maslow is actually the author of this idea that we can call the social hierarchy. According to Maslow, everything is structured in, a kind of hierarchy. starting from the higher order, which is more important, to a low order, which is less important. And this is the philosophy, though underlying everything that Europeans do, or actually every interaction that Europeans have with the rest of the world. The first thing is they put themselves on top of the pyramid, and other people who are non-European or non-whites are at the bottom of the pyramid. To maybe describe a bit what is the Maslow, pyramid of hierarchy, or how can I put it, hierarchical order of needs. His theory was actually based on hierarchy of needs. He said that a human being has needs that need to be fulfilled, which is true. Now, in his understanding, Eurocentric understanding, he puts the needs of human being in a certain hierarchy, where he put at the lowest level of needs is the needs, physical needs, needs for survival, such as food, water, shelter. Those are the basic needs that are less important, you see. And at the top of the pyramid, he put the need for self-actualization. That is what in his mind, in European mind, they consider to be most important, to self-actualize yourself. Well, you may agree with that or disagree, but my point here is to try to analyze a bit the understanding of European people, so that you see, and we can at least see, that we are not supposed to emulate European understanding of the world for our own development. We need to go deep in ourselves and search the means that we can utilize to develop Africa, and we have lots of means and a lot of capabilities. Now, when you see the basic needs, the lowest level of the needs in the European perception is the basic need. I mean, the need, physiological need of food, water, and stuff like that. This is what is considered less important in the European understanding of the world. However, if you analyze it, you will understand that you can survive without the highest need of self-actualization, but you cannot survive without food, without water, and without shelter. Without food and water, you will die. So, as African people, the need for food and the need for water is as much as important, is important as much as the need for whatever esteem or need for actualization, whatever that is considered. But in European perception, the need for food is the lowest, is the bottom, is at the bottom of the hierarchy, the less important. The highest need is self-actualization. So what I'm trying to say is that whatever sustains life, whatever is crucial to life, is what is less important in the perception of European people. And for you to understand this correctly, you need to consider the organization of an enterprise. In the organization of enterprise, according to still European perception, you have the top management, where you have your directors and stuff like that. You have the middle managers, which is the middle management, and then you have the lower level of management, which is actually the general workers. So these are the people at the bottom of the hierarchical order in any enterprise. These are the people who have no decision in whatever that has to be decided about the company. These are the people who are less important in the company. The people who are most important in the company are the top management and the middle management. These are the ones who decide which direction the company must go, what kind of investment must be done and stuff like that. But look at it. Who produce actually? Who are the producers of whatever the company needs in order to be in the business? Who are the producers of whatever products or services that the company needs in order to be in the business? Are the people at the bottom of hierarchy, are the people, general workers. Those are the ones in the mines. Those are the ones in the factories. Those are the ones who build whatever product that the company is selling. Those are the ones who produce actually the economy. You see, the world today is above 100 trillion US dollars. And this wealth is produced by the masses of the people who are poor and who are neglected from the society. This wealth is produced by the people in the mines, the people, working on the machines in the factory, the people at the lower level of the management. And yet they are the least considered. They are the least considered and the less important in the perception of European. So, in other words, European understanding of the world is based on exploitation of the masses for the benefits of the minority. Now, us as African people, we have been always have what we call Ubuntu. Ubuntu does not have a hierarchy which puts some people on top of others or makes some people more important than others. Every life is important and must be protected, must be defended, and must be looked after. This has been always our philosophy. This has been always our understanding. So if we don't tap into this knowledge of Ubuntu and this philosophy of Ubuntu, which actually belongs to us, which allowed us to build the first civilized society, human society, and which allowed us to bring the same civilization to other people. And if we have always to follow what Europeans must bring to us as advice, as instruction, we will not gonna make Africa the Africa that we want. What we will maybe succeed in doing is to make Africa as a little British and a little Portuguese or little French, which will be always like, Africa of lesser gods, whereby we need to follow other people, whatever they do. And in that situation, we become like dogs that are leading, that blinds people that are being led by dogs. And that's the situation in which we are now. So for us to change this reality, we need to create a new type of leadership in Africa. We need to produce new leaders in Africa who don't buy into European value system, but leaders who have to be taught first and foremost Maat as our central philosophy as African people. People who must understand the values of Ubuntu. These are the leaders that will have to manage Africa successfully throughout the rest of the 21st century. Because with the current leadership, you can agree with me that there's no much hope of a better future for Africa. We are going straight into one of the harsh slavery that we have never experienced. So now it is time to change the direction in which Africa is going by creating a new leadership and by standing up against imperialism and do whatever that we must do in order to change things. But we don't do it in a disorganized manner. We must be organized, because organization is one thing that we lack as African people in order to change our reality. As we have always said, we have a lot of things in common today. We understand our situation. We understand the oppression that we are going through. We understand the imperialism and its influence upon us, but we are still disorganized. We are, slow in coming together and working together. Somewhere, somehow, is because each one of us believes that he's got a solution for what Africa must do and must become, and everyone wants everyone to follow him. We don't want to support each other. We don't want to be part of an organization. And this has been and still is our major problem. So in case you want to be in an organization, you can join us in an African Continental Unity Party. If you don't want, still join any organization. Every African male and female must be part of an organization that is working to bring the conditions necessary for freedom and emancipation of Africa. If you are not part of any organization, then you are doing no good to the African people, and actually you are not contributing to the cause of African freedom and emancipation. And sometimes we need to understand that not choosing to be part of something is the same as choosing to destroy Africa. In other words, not choosing to belong to a side that is fighting for African freedom is equal as choosing to be part of those who are destroying Africa from the outside and from the inside. So if you want to see Africa emerging as a global power base, be part of an organization. Choose an organization that is working for the agenda of African freedom and emancipation and be part of that organization. So if you don't have one as yet, we invite you in the African Continental Unity Party. We invite you to join us in Free Minded Academy, in Ubuntu group for business development, educational development, as well as political development, which is Ubuntu Group, Free Minded Academy, as well as African Continental Unity Party. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention to this weekly rendezvous that we have, where we discuss things pertaining to our fight for liberation and emancipation. So please, in support of what we do, kindly share the video, like it, and share it with your contacts in order to support also what we do. And if you have some skills that you haven't been able to put in exercise for this noble cause of African liberation, please join us. Let's work together and free Africa. Until then, peace and power.